Her lips had gone the color of ash. Her wrists were still bleeding where the rope had eaten through to bone. Officer Daniel Reyes dropped to his knees in the desert hollow and pressed 2 fingers against her throat, counting. "Stay with me," he said. "Stay with me." Her eyes opened, barely, just a crack of brown in all that heat and suffering. "They took others," she whispered. "Please. My daughter." Then she stopped breathing. Daniel locked his hands over her chest and started compressions, refusing to let another woman die in this desert. Because 6 years ago, his sister Sophia disappeared on this same stretch of highway. They never found her, and he had never stopped looking. If this story already has your heart in your throat, hit that subscribe button right now and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Stay with me until the very end, because what happens in the next hour will change everything you think you know about loyalty, survival, and the kind of love that never stops searching. Rex knew before Daniel did. The German Shepherd had been restless since they turned onto Highway 86 that Tuesday morning. Shifting his weight in the passenger seat, his amber eyes cutting from the windshield to the window, and back again, in a pattern that had nothing to do with boredom, and everything to do with something Daniel could not yet hear. After 3 years of partnership, Daniel had learned the difference between Rex being anxious and Rex knowing. This was knowing. The dog's body had gone to that particular stillness, the kind that comes right before action, like a hand tightening on a door handle it has not yet turned. "Easy, boy." Daniel kept one hand on the wheel and reached over with the other to settle Rex's shoulder. "Nothing out here but sand and heat." Rex turned to the window and barked once. Sharp. Definitive. Not a request. Daniel hit the brakes. The dog was already at the glass, his front paws pressing hard against the door panel, his nose tracking something in the direction of a dry wash formation, maybe 200 yards off the road. His ears were locked forward. His tail was straight out behind him. In 3 years, Rex had never ignored a recall command. In 3 years, he had never been wrong about something either. "Rex, heel!" The dog barked again, harder this time, urgent in a way that made the hair on Daniel's neck stand up before his brain could explain why. Daniel put the car in park and reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9. I'm at mile marker 31 on the 86. K9 is alerting on something in the wash formation. Investigating. Stand by." "Copy, Unit 9. What's the nature of the alert?" "Unknown. I'll advise." He barely had the door open before Rex was gone, a tan and black blur dropping to the desert floor and moving toward the rocks with the low, purposeful stride of an animal that has already completed the calculation and is now simply executing it. Daniel followed at a run, his boots sinking with each step, the August heat pressing down from directly overhead like something with weight and intention. He squeezed through a gap between 2 boulders, and the space opened into a hollow, naturally shaded, the kind of geography that people who moved cargo had learned to use because the desert kept secrets well if you knew where to put them. Rex was already there. He was not barking. He was not circling. He was positioned between the entrance and what Daniel first registered as a pile of dark clothing, his body angled outward in the posture Daniel had come to understand as something specific and deliberate. Not a dog waiting for praise, a dog standing post. Then the pile of clothing moved. Daniel was on his knees before he finished processing what he was seeing. Young woman, late 20s, blonde hair matted with blood and sand. Skin burned raw across every exposed surface. Lips cracked and bleeding. Bruising across her arms and legs in the careful, systematic pattern of someone who had been handled rather than attacked. Processed rather than simply hurt. And her wrists. He had to look at them for a moment before he could look back at her face. Because what the rope had done to her wrists, in whatever hours she had spent trying to work free, was the kind of thing that takes a moment to absorb. On her inner left forearm, still raised and raw, was a brand mark. A symbol burned into the skin. Daniel had seen that symbol once before. In a photograph. In a case file that had been officially closed 6 years ago, with a notation that read, "Insufficient evidence to establish criminal activity." His sister's case file. He did not make the connection consciously. Not yet. He filed it somewhere and focused on what was in front of him. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm Officer Daniel Reyes. You're safe." Her eyes opened, brown, clouded with pain and dehydration, and something deeper than both of those, but alive and fighting. "Please," her voice was barely sound. "Please help me." "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "My daughter." Her hand moved toward him by a few inches, the absolute limit of what her body would allow. "She's 5. She's with my grandmother. Please don't let me die. She needs me." Something cracked open in Daniel's chest, and he did not have time to deal with it. "You're not going to die. You hear me? You are not going to die today." He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 9. I need immediate medical evacuation. Female victim, late 20s, severe dehydration, multiple injuries, signs of prolonged restraint and physical abuse. I have trafficking indicators. Repeat, trafficking indicators present. Get me a helicopter now." "Copy, Unit 9. Medevac dispatched. ETA 18 minutes. 18 minutes. He looked at her lips, the color they had gone. "She doesn't have 18 minutes, he said, and then put the radio down and opened his canteen. He pressed a dampened cloth against her mouth, and she tried to swallow, choked, tried again. He talked to her the whole time, kept his voice level, kept his hands steady. Rex had not moved from his position at the entrance, his amber eyes sweeping the space outside with the consistency of a machine that does not get tired. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Maya." A breath. "Maya Torres." "Maya, I need you to stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me about your daughter." Her eyes sharpened slightly at that. Not much, but enough. "Lucia," she said. "She's 5. She loves butterflies and won't eat anything yellow." A weak sound that might have been a laugh. "I don't know why. Never yellow. She's going to be the most specific person in the world someday." "She sounds like a handful." "She's everything." Maya's voice fractured on the last word. "I was driving to my mother's house. Rest stop in Marana. A man asked me for directions." She stopped, started again. "There were others. In the truck. I could hear them but couldn't see them. They kept us in the dark for days, I think. I lost count." "How many others?" "I don't know. 8, maybe more. They wouldn't let us talk." Maya's hands twisted weakly in the dirt. "I tried to escape. I bit one of them. Got maybe 20 feet before they caught me." She touched her face where the bruising was the darkest. "After that, the one with the tattoo on his neck decided I was too much trouble." Her voice dropped. "He drove for a long time. Then he dragged me out and left me here. Last thing he said was, 'The desert doesn't talk.'" Daniel felt a cold focus settling over the anger in his chest. "The tattoo. Describe it." "Neck, right side, like a compass or a wheel. Military style." Maya's eyes found his. "He'll come back. Men like that, they come back to check." "He won't get near you." Rex's growl stopped the conversation completely. It came from the entrance. Low, professional, the specific register Daniel had heard exactly twice before in 3 years. Once at a traffic stop, where the driver had a weapon under the seat, and once when they had cornered a suspect in a warehouse. Not aggression. Assessment. The sound of an animal that has identified a threat and is reporting it. Daniel was on his feet with his weapon drawn before the sound finished. A man appeared at the gap in the rocks. Tall, broad across the shoulders in the way that came from specific training rather than general fitness. A tattoo on the right side of his neck. Compass design, military style. His hands were loose at his sides, and his face was arranged in the careful expression of a man who is performing casual concern. "Morning, officer." His voice was even, unhurried.
"Saw the patrol vehicle on the road. Thought maybe someone needed help."
"Step back. Hands where I can see them." "Easy." He raised his hands slowly, the motion deliberate and slightly mocking. The gesture of a man who has been asked to do this before and found it mildly entertaining. "I'm just a concerned citizen." His eyes moved past Daniel to the hollow, to the shadow where Maya lay. They stayed there for 2 seconds, long enough to confirm what he came to confirm, and then returned to Daniel's face. "What did you find in there?" "Law enforcement business. You can go." "Sure," he smiled. It did not reach his eyes by a significant margin. "Desert holds a lot of secrets, officer. Some of them probably ought to stay that way." He backed away without turning around, keeping his eyes on Daniel until the rocks blocked the sightline. A moment later, footsteps on sand, then an engine. Tires on gravel. The sound moving away and eventually disappearing into the general silence of the desert. Daniel waited 30 seconds before he holstered his weapon. Rex had not taken his eyes off the entrance. "That was him." Maya's voice behind him was barely a breath. "The tattoo. That was the man who left me here." A pause. "He came back to make sure I was dead." Daniel turned and looked at her, at the brand mark on her arm, at the specific pattern of her bruising, at the way Rex was still positioned between her and the world outside. His body angled for coverage, his eyes still forward, refusing to stand down from a post nobody had officially assigned him. Something shifted in Daniel's understanding of what this morning was. This was not a random victim in a random desert hollow. This was connected to something older and larger and more deliberate than anything a single patrol shift was supposed to reach. He could feel the shape of it without being able to see the edges yet. He crouched back down beside Maya and pressed the damp cloth to her lips again. "Tierra Negra," Maya said suddenly. Daniel went still. "What?" "When they were transporting us. I heard it through the truck wall. One of the guards on his phone." Her eyes were fighting to stay open. "He said the Tierra Negra shipment was running late. Said El Patron was going to be angry." She looked at Daniel. "What is Tierra Negra?" He wrote it down. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." The helicopter sound reached them 4 minutes later, still distant, but growing. Rex heard it before Daniel did, and his ears rotated toward it, tracking it in. The dog had not left his post. He was still between Maya Torres and the entrance to the hollow, his body blocking the gap, his amber eyes alert. Daniel watched his partner and felt something he could not immediately name. Not pride, exactly. Recognition. The specific recognition of someone who has been working alongside another living creature long enough to understand that what they are watching is not training expressing itself, but character expressing itself. And those were not the same thing. The helicopter broke over the ridge, and the rotor wash hit the hollow, and Maya grabbed Daniel's hand with a grip that was stronger than anything her condition should have allowed. "You'll stay?" she asked. "Until they take me?" "I'm not going anywhere." "Your dog." She looked past him to Rex. "He found me. He heard me when there was nothing left to hear." "He does that," Daniel said. The medics were already dropping down the slope with their kit, and Daniel stood and stepped back to give them room. And as he did, his radio crackled with a routine dispatch update that he would have ignored on any other morning. Missing persons report filed 48 hours prior. Female subject, Maya Torres, 28 years old, Tucson, elementary school teacher. One daughter, age 5. Last known location, rest stop, Interstate 10, Marana. Daniel looked at the brand mark on Maya's arm as the medics worked around her. The symbol he had seen in a photograph, in a case file. His sister's case file, 6 years old and officially closed. He looked at Rex. The dog had finally stepped back from the entrance. He was watching the medics work, his body still angled for coverage, his ears still forward. And then he turned and looked directly at Daniel, with the amber eyes that had been reading him for 3 years. The eyes that never needed words to say what they were saying. Daniel had driven this corridor for 6 years looking for something he could not find. He was beginning to understand that he had just found the door. The helicopter lifted, and Daniel stood in the desert, watching it, until the sound was gone and the silence came back. Rex sat beside him. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Daniel's radio crackled, and he made himself return to the world. The hospital was 32 minutes away, and Daniel drove the whole distance with the brand mark on Maya's arm, sitting in the front of his mind like something that had been waiting there for 6 years, patient and quiet, waiting for the moment when he would finally be ready to look at it directly. He had looked at it in a photograph exactly once. In the official case file for Sofia Reyes, missing person, 23 years old, last seen at a rest stop on Interstate 10 near Marana 6 years ago. The file was 5 pages long and ended with a notation, insufficient evidence to establish criminal activity, and a case number that had not been touched since. He had read those 5 pages so many times that the paper had softened along the fold lines. He knew the brand mark. He had never known what it meant until this morning. Tierra Negra. He said it quietly in the car, and Rex's ears rotated toward him and then forward again, tracking the road. The emergency room was controlled chaos when Daniel arrived. Dr. Carmen Vidal, the attending trauma physician, was a compact woman in her early 40s who moved through the chaos with the efficiency of someone who had been making fast decisions in difficult rooms for a very long time. She met Daniel at the threshold of Maya's treatment bay, with an expression that told him the news was bad enough to be honest about, but not bad enough to be final. "Critical but stable," she said. "Severe dehydration, multiple contusions, signs of prolonged restraint. She's been through this for days, not hours." She paused. "There's something else." The brand mark. Dr. Vidal looked at him. "You've seen it before." "Once, in a case file." He kept his voice neutral. "You?" "3 months ago. A woman found near the border, Sasabe Road. She didn't survive." The doctor's voice was clinical, but her eyes were not. "Same mark, same placement, same pattern of injury. I filed a report at the time. I don't know if anyone read it." "Someone didn't want it read," Daniel said. Dr. Vidal held his gaze for a moment and then nodded once. The nod of a person who has suspected something for a long time and has just had it confirmed by someone else saying it out loud. "She's asking for you," she said. "When you're ready." Daniel was ready. Rosa Torres arrived 20 minutes later, and she came through the hospital doors the way weather comes through an open window, immediate and total and impossible to redirect. She was 74 years old, and she had the kind of face that had been formed by decades of Arizona sun, and the specific architecture of a woman who had outlasted every difficult thing that had ever tried to outlast her. The reception desk staff started to say something, and she walked past them without breaking stride. Daniel caught her before she reached the emergency room. "Mrs. Torres, I'm Officer Daniel Reyes. I found your granddaughter." She stopped. She looked at him with eyes the same shade of brown as Maya's, searching his face the way people search faces when they are trying to determine whether the news is the kind they can survive. "Is she alive?" "Yes, ma'am. Critical, but stable. The doctors are with her." Rosa Torres's knees went, and Daniel caught her under both arms and held her up while she wept with the specific totality of a woman releasing something that had been building for 48 hours. He held her until the worst of it passed, and then helped her to a chair and sat beside her. "You found her," Rosa said. Her voice was still unsteady, but it was coming back. "How did you find her?" "My partner found her," Daniel said. "He heard her when I couldn't." Rosa wiped her face. "Your partner? Another officer?" "A German shepherd," Daniel said. "His name is Rex." Something moved across Rosa's face that was not quite a smile, but was in the same territory. "A dog saved my Maya. The best dog I've ever known." Rosa straightened in the chair. "I want to thank him, personally." Protocol said no. Regulations said no visitors to the K9 unit's vehicle without specific authorization. Daniel looked at this 74-year-old woman, who had just spent 2 days not knowing whether her granddaughter was dead or alive, and he stood up. "Come with me." They walked out to the parking lot together. Rex was standing in the back of the patrol vehicle, his tail moving the moment he saw Daniel, his amber eyes tracking Rosa with the careful attention he gave every new person, reading her the way he read everything, completely and without assumption. Daniel opened the vehicle. Rex jumped down and approached Rosa slowly, the way he approached people who were carrying grief, as if he understood that certain emotional states required a different kind of pressure than others. Rosa dropped to her knees on the hospital asphalt without hesitation. She took Rex's face in both hands. "Gracias," she said. Her voice was very quiet. "Gracias por encontrarla. Thank you for finding her. Thank you for staying with her." Rex leaned into her hands and was still. Daniel had to look away. When they went back inside, Maya was conscious, and the color had begun returning to her face in small degrees. She looked at Daniel from the hospital bed, with the eyes of someone who has been through something they are still sorting through, and is not yet ready to perform recovery. "Lucia," was the first thing she said. "Your grandmother is here. Lucia is with a neighbor. She's safe." Daniel pulled a chair to the bedside. "Can you talk about what happened?" "I want to talk." Maya's voice was steadier than it had any right to be. "I want them caught." She told him everything. The rest stop in Marana on Saturday morning. The man who asked for directions, younger than Victor Salinas, with an apologetic expression that she had made the mistake of trusting. The van that appeared behind her car. The cloth. The darkness. The voices of other women she could hear but not see, because they were separated by partitions inside the truck, each one isolated to prevent coordination. "How long were you held before they moved you?" Daniel asked. 3 days, maybe 4. Maya's hands moved restlessly on the blanket. Underground, no windows, a mattress and a bucket. Someone brought food twice a day, but never spoke. She paused. There was something else. The second night, someone came through who wasn't a guard. She moved differently, quieter, like she was trying not to be noticed. Daniel went still. "A woman?" "Yes, older, Hispanic." She didn't speak above a whisper. Maya looked at her own hands. "She slipped something into my hand through the gap under the partition. A piece of paper. 4 numbers. "What were the numbers?" Maya recited them. 2018. I memorized them because she risked something to give them to me. I didn't know what they meant. Her eyes found Daniel's. The guards called her La Guardiana. Daniel wrote the name down. His pen did not move for a moment after he finished writing. "Did you hear anything else?" he asked. "Locations, names, anything about the operation?" "Tierra Negra. I heard it 3 times, the ranch. And one name that everyone used carefully, like they were afraid of it. El Patron." Maya's jaw tightened. "They treated those women like cargo, Daniel. Like something you buy and ship and don't think about again after the transaction is done." He was about to respond when his phone buzzed on the chair beside him. A text from an unknown number. He looked at the screen. The image loaded slowly. A photograph taken through glass, slightly blurred from distance. His patrol vehicle. Rex visible in the rear window, faced toward the camera, amber eyes catching the light. Below the photograph, 8 words. "You found one. Walk away or join her." Daniel read it twice. Then he looked up at Maya. "I need to step out for a moment." "What is it?" "Nothing that changes anything." He stood. "I'll be right back." He walked to the corridor and stood with his back against the wall and looked at his phone. His hands were steady. His heart was doing something that was not quite fear and not quite fury, but occupied the territory between them. They had been at the hospital. They had photographed Rex through the window. They knew which vehicle was his, and they had been close enough to get the shot within the last hour. His phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen. 6 words. 6 years ago. Sophia was ours. Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. Just one moment. Then he started again, deliberately, the way you breathe when you need your hands to stay steady, and your voice to stay level, and your mind to stay where the work is, instead of where the grief wants to pull you. They knew about Sophia. They knew her name. They knew the connection, and they were using it as a warning, which meant they had been watching him long enough to build a file, which meant this was not a response to this morning. This was a response to something they had been anticipating for longer than today. He walked back into Maya's room and sat down and did not tell her about the message. He would tell Kwan. That was the right order of things. Agent Diana Kwan arrived at the hospital at 2 in the afternoon. She was 34 years old, with sharp eyes and a quality of stillness about her that came from 2 years of watching investigations get quietly buried and having to continue working anyway. She shook Daniel's hand with the directness of someone who has no patience left for social calibration and came straight to what mattered. "Jessica Taylor," she said, then caught herself. "Maya Torres. She was in our database as a probable trafficking victim 46 hours after she was reported missing. We've been building a case against Tierra Negra Transport for 2 years." She paused. "Every time we get close, the case stalls." Someone inside the system. Someone with reach. Witnesses recant without explanation. Evidence gets mishandled. Prosecutors get reassigned. Her jaw tightened. "My partner was killed 22 months ago. His home, staged as a robbery. He had been preparing to file a formal corruption report the week before he died." Daniel looked at her. "You know who the insider is?" "I have a name I can't prove yet." She met his eyes. "Your lieutenant, Frank Mora. 11 years on Cabal's payroll, according to a source I can't put in front of a judge." The name landed quietly. Daniel let it land and did not react while it was still landing. Frank Mora, who had called him careful 4 times in a 6-minute conversation that afternoon. Frank Mora, who had requested Daniel specifically for the Highway 86 corridor 3 years ago, a fact Daniel had always read as routine and was now reading differently. "Ernesto Cabal," Daniel said. "El Patron." Kwan nodded. "Landowner, agricultural logistics. Tierra Negra Transport is his front. He has been operating this network for nearly 20 years, and he has never been charged with anything more serious than a zoning dispute." Her voice was flat with old anger. "He donates significantly to county campaigns. He plays golf with the right people. He is protected from every direction that protection can come from." "My sister disappeared 6 years ago," Daniel said. "Same corridor, same rest stop profile. The case was closed in 5 pages. Kwan looked at him for a long moment.
"I know about Sophia," she said it carefully. "She was flagged in our database as a probable trafficking victim 18 months after she disappeared. The case was closed before our task force existed. By the time we reviewed the file, the trail was cold." She paused. "I'm sorry. I assumed your department had communicated the flag to your family."
"They didn't." "No, they wouldn't have." Her voice carried a specific bitterness. "Not with Mora in the building." Daniel sat with that for a moment. 6 years of looking at a case file that ended in 5 pages. 6 years of being told the trail was cold. 6 years of a flag in a federal database that was never passed to the family of the missing woman because someone in the building had a reason to make sure it stayed buried. "Is she alive?" he asked. "I don't know." Kwan held his gaze without looking away from it. "But the woman Maya described, La Guardiana, that profile matches a pattern we've seen in long-term captives who are given operational roles to survive. If she has been inside for 6 years, she would be exactly the kind of person the network finds useful. Keeps the others calm, prevents escapes, knows every detail of how the operation runs." She paused. "And if she is who you think she is, she would also be the most valuable intelligence asset we have ever had inside Tierra Negra." Daniel looked at the 4 numbers Maya had given him. 2018. The year. The year Sophia was taken. A piece of paper slipped through a gap under a partition in the dark. 4 numbers. Not coordinates. Not a code. A year. Her way of reaching backward through time to the moment before everything changed, leaving a marker that said she was real, that she had been there before the woman receiving the note, that she had not forgotten who she was. "She's still fighting," Daniel said quietly. Kwan did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was careful. "If she is alive and inside that network, the only way to reach her is to take the network apart." She looked at him. "I have a contact in Phoenix. Tierra Negra has a convoy scheduled for tonight. 3 trucks, midnight departure, heading south through the Altar Valley corridor. 22 women, according to intercepted communication." "And the warrant?" "Denied 4 hours ago. Someone in the prosecutor's chain." Her expression did not change. "Which means we do this the only way left." Daniel looked at Rex through the window. The dog was watching him from the patrol vehicle, with the patient attention of an animal that has been waiting for the conversation to reach its conclusion, and is ready for whatever comes next. He thought about Frank Mora saying the word careful 4 times. He thought about a case file that ended in 5 pages. He thought about a flag in a federal database that his family was never told about. He thought about a woman in the dark, slipping 4 numbers through a gap under a partition to a stranger she would never see. "What do you need from me?" he asked. They spent 4 hours planning in Kwan's car in the hospital parking lot, with a map spread across the dashboard and Rex watching from the vehicle beside them. Kwan had 2 FBI colleagues willing to operate without authorization, both of them carrying personal reasons for wanting Tierra Negra finished that went beyond professional obligation. Daniel called Officer Rosa Mendez, a 15-year veteran who had no patience for politics, and a daughter who had almost been taken from a school parking lot 3 years ago by a man in a white van who drove away when a teacher walked out at the wrong moment for him and the right moment for everyone else. Rosa listened to Daniel's summary in silence and then said, "Tell me where to be and when." 6 people, against an armed convoy with professional escorts and a network that had survived 2 years of federal investigation. Daniel laid it out, and nobody flinched. "The canyon narrows at mile 14 south of 3 Points," Quan said. "That's our window. The convoy has to slow through there. Lead car, 3 trucks, tail car. We estimate 10 to 12 armed escorts total." "Rex runs the perimeter once the vehicles stop," Daniel said. "He'll find anyone who runs before we can." Rosa looked at the map. "And if this goes wrong?" "Then it goes wrong, and we live with that." Daniel met her eyes. "But 22 women get moved across a border tonight if we don't try." Rosa nodded once. "I'll take the South Ridge." They were in position by 11:30. The desert at midnight carried a cold that the afternoon gave no warning of, the temperature dropping fast once the sun was gone. And Daniel sat on the North Ridge with Rex pressed against his left side and the radio earpiece delivering Quan's intermittent updates from 300 yards south of him. Rex was still, the particular stillness of an animal that has understood the assignment and is waiting for the signal with the patience of something that does not experience waiting the way humans do, without the clock running in the background, making the silence heavier. "Convoy approaching," Quan said through the earpiece. "ETA 4 minutes. Daniel put his hand on Rex's shoulder. The dog did not look at him. He was already watching the road. The headlights appeared around the far curve, the lead car first, then the 3 trucks moving in tight formation, then the tail car behind. Daniel counted the vehicles and counted his breaths and waited for Quan's signal. "All vehicles in zone, now." The spike strips detonated simultaneously under the lead car's tires, and the vehicle spun hard into the canyon wall, with a sound like something structural giving way. The tail car braked and tried to reverse and found Rosa's vehicle blocking the exit before the driver completed the thought. The 3 trucks slowed and stopped because there was nowhere left to go, and the men inside them were already opening doors. "Federal agents, on the ground, now!" The response was not compliance. 4 men came out of the lead car with weapons drawn, and Daniel dropped 2 of them from the ridge before they could find a target. Rex was already moving, launched off the rock face in a single motion, hitting a guard who had broken for the eastern wash at full speed, and taking him down in the darkness with a sound that ended the man's running immediately. A guard from the second truck raised his weapon toward Rex. Daniel shot him before the motion completed. "Clear, lead car," Rose's voice, tight but steady. "Clear, tail car." Quan's team moving fast through the south side. Daniel was down from the ridge and at the trucks before the echo of the last shot finished. He found Rex at the perimeter of the eastern wash, standing over the guard he had brought down, his eyes finding Daniel across the dark ground, with the specific look that meant the work was done, and he was waiting for the next instruction. "Good boy," Daniel touched his shoulder once. "Stay close." He reached the first container and cut the lock. The door swung open, and the smell hit him before anything else. The smell of human beings held in a confined space, without adequate water or air for days. And then the sound. Women's voices, initially wordless, then building into something coherent as they processed that the door was open, and the person standing in it was not who they had been expecting. "It's law enforcement. You're safe. I need everyone to stay calm and come toward my voice." They came out one at a time, some supporting others, some barely able to stand, all of them blinking in the harsh sweep of the tactical lights. Daniel counted them as they emerged and cut their restraints, and passed them toward Rosa, who had medical supplies, and the quiet authority of a woman who knows exactly how to be present for people in the worst moments of their lives. 18. 20. 22. He was about to call the count complete when a voice from the back of the third container said his name. "You're Daniel." He turned. A woman had stayed at the rear of the container, seated against the back wall, watching him with a specific, careful attention of someone who has been assessing situations for a very long time and has learned to wait until the assessment is complete before moving. She was older than the others. Her face carried the particular weathering of years spent in conditions that were not designed for human dignity. But her eyes were clear and sharp, and looking at him with an expression that was not fear. "How do you know my name?" he said. "Sophia told me." The woman stood slowly, favoring her left side. "She described you. Short dark hair, the way you hold yourself when you're trying not to show what you're feeling." A pause. "She said you'd come. She said you'd never stop." Daniel did not speak. He was aware of Quan approaching from behind him, aware of Rosa moving the other women toward the vehicles, aware of Rex at his left heel. All of it was very far away. "Where is she?" His voice came out level. He was grateful for that. "They moved her 18 months ago." The woman's voice was careful, delivering something heavy with the attention it deserved. "To what they call the permanent facility. The ranch. The Guardiana knows exactly where it is." She held his gaze. "La Guardiana has known every detail of this operation for 6 years. She has been documenting it. Names, dates, locations, client records. Every piece of information she could collect and hold in her memory, because she had no paper and no way to transmit it." The woman's jaw tightened. She has been waiting for someone to reach her. "The 4 numbers," Daniel said. 2018. The woman's expression shifted. "She passed that to someone." "Maya Torres, the woman I found this morning." A silence. The woman put her hand over her mouth for a moment and looked away. When she looked back, something in her face had cracked open slightly. The specific expression of someone who has held something tightly for a very long time and has just learned it reached where it was supposed to reach. "Sophia sent it to every woman she could reach," the woman said. "The year she was taken. So that if anyone got out, they would have something that proved she was real, that she had been there, that she hadn't disappeared without leaving a mark." Her voice dropped. "She never knew if any of them made it." "One of them made it," Daniel said. Quan touched Daniel's arm from behind. "We need to move. Mora will know about the convoy within the hour. If he's communicating with Cabal's people, they'll know the ranch has been exposed." "Then we go tonight," Daniel said. "We don't have the location." "She does." Daniel looked at the woman from the container. "The ranch. Can you give us coordinates?" The woman had been inside the network long enough to know what it was she was deciding to do, and Daniel watched her make the decision with the gravity it required. She had been a prisoner. She had survived by making herself useful and keeping her head down and not becoming a problem. What he was asking her to do was the opposite of every survival strategy she had built over however many years she had been inside. It was also the only way this ended. "Highway 86, she said. "Turn south on Darby Well Road. 14 miles in, there's a dry wash crossing. Before the crossing, a dirt track going west. You won't see it unless you're looking for it." She paused. "Underground facility. 2 levels. The women are on the lower level. La Guardiana has a room on the upper level near the main office. They keep her close because they think she's theirs." "She's not theirs," Daniel said. "No," the woman said quietly. "She never was." Quan was already on the radio with her 2 FBI colleagues. Rosa had the convoy witnesses loaded and moving toward the staging point, where the border clinic contact was waiting. Daniel looked at Rex. The dog was watching him with the steady amber focus that Daniel had learned to read as something very close to readiness, the expression of an animal that has completed one thing and understands there is another thing coming and is simply waiting to begin. "There's something else you need to know," the woman said. Daniel turned back to her. Her voice had changed, carrying something that was not quite hesitation, but was in the same territory. Lieutenant Mora. He called the main facility 40 minutes ago. Someone told him a team was operating tonight. He gave them the patrol rotation and the response time estimate for backup. Daniel felt the cold move through him. You heard this. I heard everything. For years, I heard everything, because they stopped noticing I was in the room. She met his eyes. He told them you were the officer involved. He gave them your name, Daniel. The night went very quiet around that information. Kwan said something sharp into her radio. Then she turned to Daniel. Mora is at his house. I have a colleague who can pick him up in the next 20 minutes. But if we wait for that to process, we lose the window on the ranch. Daniel looked at the dark horizon in the direction of Darby Well Road. Somewhere 14 miles south of a dry wash crossing, on a dirt track going west, in an underground facility on an upper level near the main office, a woman was waiting. She had been waiting for 6 years. She had passed her year through the dark to every stranger she could reach, leaving a marker in the only material she had, time itself, so that if anyone got out, they would know she was real. We don't wait, Daniel said. He touched Rex's shoulder, and the dog stood and moved with him toward the vehicle, and the night opened up in front of them, like something that had been there all along, waiting to be entered. Darby Well Road at 2 a.m. was the kind of dark that has no bottom to it. The desert swallowing the headlights 20 feet out and offering nothing back. Daniel drove without lights for the last 3 miles, following the track by memory and by Rex, who sat forward in the passenger seat with his nose working the gap in the window, reading the air for things that did not belong. Kwan was in the vehicle behind him. Her 2 colleagues followed. 4 people and 1 dog, going into a facility that had operated for nearly 2 decades without anyone reaching it. And the only map they had was the word of a woman from a shipping container and a dirt track going west. 14 miles, Kwan said through the earpiece. We should see the wash crossing. Rex stiffened. Not the alert he had given that morning on Highway 86, which had been urgent and physical and pointed. This was different. This was the stillness that came before the other kind of stillness, the coiling that preceded action. And Daniel pulled the vehicle to a stop without Kwan having to say anything else. Something's here, he said quietly. Rex's head turned left, his ears locked. His chest expanded with a slow breath and held it. A guard. 1, maybe 2, positioned on the approach. They had been expected. Mora had given them the name, and now the facility had said a welcome. Daniel got out of the vehicle without closing the door and moved to the rear, where Kwan had already stepped out of hers. They know we're coming, he said. How many? Rex says at least 1 on the left approach. There could be more. Kwan did not ask how a dog communicated patrol positions through body language. She had been working alongside Daniel long enough in the last 8 hours to understand that Rex was a source of intelligence she did not question. We go wide. Flank both sides. You take Rex through the center once we've drawn their attention east. Rex, find them. The dog moved into the dark like something poured into it, low and fast and absolutely silent. And Daniel followed at a distance that maintained visual contact without constraining what Rex was doing. He heard the guard before he saw him. The specific sound of a man trying to be still, who has been still too long, and shifted his weight. Rex was already there. The sound the guard made when the dog hit him was short and definitive, and then there was no more sound from that direction. East side clear, one of Kwan's colleagues said through the earpiece. West clear. Moving to the hatch. The hatch was exactly where the woman had said it would be, set into a concrete frame that had been covered with soil and rock and 15 years of desert accumulation. Rex found the ventilation outlet 12 feet east of it by sitting down and raising one paw and looking at Daniel with the expression of an animal that has filed its report and is waiting for the humans to catch up. Daniel pulled the hatch, and the darkness below it had a different quality than the darkness above, enclosed and man-made, carrying the sounds of generators and the faint smell of machinery. And underneath both of those things, human habitation. The sounds of people living in a space they did not choose. He went down first, Rex second, lowered by harness because the latter was not built for animals. And Rex accepted the indignity with the patience he brought to everything that came between him and the work. The upper level was a corridor of doors, office at the far end, lights on beneath it, 2 guards at the midpoint, both of them already reacting to the sound of the hatch because Mora had told them someone was coming, and they had been waiting with a particular tension of men who are prepared, but not certain. Daniel dropped the first one before he raised his weapon. Rex took the second before the man could shout. Quan came through the hatch behind them and cleared the corridor right, while Daniel moved left toward the office door. He did not kick it. He turned the handle and pushed it open and stepped inside with his weapon up and found Ernesto Cabal sitting behind a desk with a glass of water and a pistol and the composed expression of a man who has calculated several possible outcomes for this moment and has selected the one that requires the least expenditure of emotion. Cabal was 58 years old, silver-haired, with a face that belonged to boardrooms and charitable foundations and county commissioner golf tournaments. He looked at Daniel the way a man looks at a problem he's been expecting and had hoped would be slightly larger before it arrived. Officer Reyes. He said it with the specific inflection of a man using a title as a container for its opposite. You've had a busy evening. Where is she? Cabal tilted his head slightly. There are many women in this facility, officer. You'll need to be more specific. Sofia Reyes. Daniel's voice did not waver. La Guardiana. Where is she? Something moved in Cabal's expression. Not surprise. More like the adjustment a chess player makes when an opponent has taken a piece they did not expect to lose. He reached for the pistol on the desk, and Daniel stepped forward, and Rex crossed the room before either of them completed the calculation. The dog hit Cabal's gun arm with 90 pounds of focused momentum, and the weapon discharged into the wall as man and dog went sideways, Rex driving him against the office wall and holding him there with his jaws at the man's throat and his eyes finding Daniel with the focused question that always meant the same thing. Your call. I'm waiting. Rex, hold. The dog held. Cabal was breathing in the shallow, careful way of someone who understands exactly what proximity to those jaws means and has decided that stillness is the correct response. Daniel picked up Cabal's weapon from the floor and looked at the man who had run a trafficking network for 20 years behind the cover of a legitimate business and the protection of a county official who played golf with the right people. Sofia Reyes, he said again. Room 12, Cabal said. The composure had not broken, but it had recalibrated, contracting to what was essential. Upper level, east corridor. A pause. She won't be what you're expecting. Rex, out. The dog released and stepped back, but held his position between Cabal and the door, and Daniel cuffed Cabal to the desk bracket and left him there, and moved back into the corridor. Room 12 had no lock on the outside. He pushed it open. She was standing in the center of the room, not sitting on a bed, not crouched in a corner. Standing, with her arms at her sides and her chin level and her eyes on the door, because she had heard the gunshot and the sounds of the corridor, and she had stood up and faced the door because that was what she had trained herself to do over 6 years of surviving in a place that was designed to take that capacity away from her. She was 29 years old, and she looked like someone who had lived 40 of them. Her face had been formed by circumstances that the sister Daniel had known at 23 could not have anticipated, and could not have prepared for. But her eyes were the same.
"Danny," she said. Just that. His name, the way she had said it their entire childhood. Shortened and familiar, and carrying inside it every version of every moment they had shared before the rest stop on Interstate 10 6 years ago. Daniel crossed the room, and his sister met him halfway, and they held each other in the way of people who have been separated by something that should have been permanent, and has somehow, against everything the odds said, turned out not to be. He did not say anything for a long time. There was nothing that the moment needed from words. Rex came to the doorway and sat down. He watched them with his amber eyes, and his ears were soft, and his tail moved once, slowly, the specific movement of an animal that has reached the end of something it has been working toward, and recognizes the completion. It was Sophia who pulled back first. She held Daniel's face in both hands, and looked at him the way you look at something you memorized and are now comparing to the original. "You got older," she said. "So did you. I have things you need." Her voice shifted, becoming operational in a way that told him something about how she had survived, what capacity she had developed to move between the person she was and the function she performed. 6 years of documentation. Names, client records, transport routes, dates, the entire operational structure of Tierra Negra from the inside. "I have it here." She touched her temple. "All of it. I couldn't write it down, but I held every piece of it. Sophia, I need you to record it before anything else happens to me. Before anyone who knows I have it can—" "Sophia," his voice was steady. "That comes next. Right now, right this moment, I need to know you're okay." She looked at him, and something in the operational efficiency of her expression cracked slightly. The way walls crack when the pressure they've been holding against finally begins to release from the other side. "I'm not okay," she said honestly, "but I'm here." A pause. "And I knew you'd come. I passed that number to every woman I could reach, because I knew if even one of them got out, you would find it, and you would come." "Maya Torres got out." Sophia closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet. "She made it. She made it." The sounds from the corridor were Kwan's team moving through the lower level, opening doors, counting voices, the systematic work of people doing the thing that had been delayed by obstruction and corruption and the protected comfort of a man who played golf with county commissioners. It was happening now. It was finally happening. Daniel kept one hand on Sophia's shoulder as they moved into the corridor, and he could feel the tension in her. The specific readiness of someone who had lived for 6 years in a state of controlled alertness and could not simply step out of it because a door had opened. That would take time. That would take more than tonight. But tonight was enough for tonight. They reached the upper-level corridor, and Kwan appeared from the east branch. She saw Sophia and stopped. Then she looked at Daniel, and the expression on her face was the expression of someone who has been working towards something for 2 years, through obstruction and loss, and the specific exhaustion of doing the right thing in a system that keeps finding ways to make it harder, and has just watched it succeed. "How many on the lower level?" Daniel asked. 31, Kwan said. 31 women, all alive. Sophia made a sound beside him, small and involuntary. She put her hand over her mouth. "Mora?" Daniel asked. "In custody, 40 minutes ago." Kwan's voice carried something that was not quite satisfaction and was not quite relief, but lived in the space between them. He didn't resist. His colleague said he just sat down when they came through the door, like he'd been waiting. Daniel thought about Mora saying, "Careful," 4 times in 6 minutes. About the specific weight of a man who has been holding something for 11 years and has spent the last several hours watching the thing he protected crumble from the outside in.
He did not feel sympathy. He felt the particular complexity of a person confronting the fact that human beings are capable of simultaneous cowardice and something that almost resembles intention, and that the two things existing in the same person did not resolve each other. Rex pressed against Daniel's leg from the left side. Not alert, not working, just present, the way the dog was present at the end of things, with the full weight of himself offered as something solid to stand beside. Daniel reached down and put his hand on the dog's shoulder and felt the warmth of him and the specific steadiness of an animal that does not carry the weight of 6 years of not knowing, and had therefore arrived at this moment without the accumulated exhaustion that was now settling into Daniel's legs and his chest and the spaces behind his eyes. "We need medical for everyone on the lower level," he said. "Already called," Quan said. "ETA 12 minutes. Sophia was looking at the corridor with the expression of someone seeing a space they have known for years, from the inside, for the first time from a different angle. "There are women here who have been inside longer than I have," she said. 3 of them arrived before me. They won't know how to leave." "I know," Daniel said. "We'll help them." "I mean, they literally won't know." Her voice was precise and careful, and very tired. "Some of them have been in here so long that the idea of a door that opens without permission doesn't process the way it should. You have to approach them slowly. You have to let them move toward you rather than moving toward them." She looked at Quan. "I can help with that. I know their names. I know what they need to hear." Quan looked at Daniel. He nodded once. "Then let's go," Sophia said, and she walked toward the lower level with the bearing of a woman who had spent 6 years surviving something that was designed to break her, and had decided somewhere in the middle of those 6 years that if she was going to survive it, she was going to survive it as herself, and had held that decision against every pressure that the years applied to it, and was still holding it now, walking down a corridor in an underground facility in the Arizona desert at 2:30 in the morning, going to help people she had protected for years, finally walked toward a door that opened. Rex walked beside her without being asked. The first 3 days, Sophia did not sleep in a room with the door closed. Daniel noticed it on the second night, when he got up at 3 in the morning and found her sitting in the hallway outside the guest room, with her back against the wall and her knees drawn up and her eyes open. Not distressed, not crying, just sitting in the doorway the way you sit in a space when you are still deciding whether it is safe to be inside it. He sat down on the floor beside her without saying anything. After a moment, Rex came padding from the living room and settled across both their feet with the full, warm weight of an animal that had nowhere else to be. "He's always warm," Sophia said. "He always is," Daniel said. They sat there until the sky outside the window began its first color change from black to the deep blue that comes before dawn, and neither of them needed to explain what they were doing or why it was necessary. Some things do not require explanation from people who grew up in the same house and understand each other's silences better than most people understand each other's words. Dr. Carmen Vidal had given Daniel a list of things to expect and a longer list of things not to say. Sophia was not broken, the doctor had told him carefully, but she had been reconstructed around a set of survival strategies that had kept her alive in conditions that were not compatible with normal human psychology. And the reconstruction would not simply reverse itself because the conditions had changed. That would take time and work, and the specific kind of patience that has nothing to do with waiting, and everything to do with showing up every day without an agenda. Daniel showed up every day without an agenda. Maya Torres was discharged from the hospital on the 4th day. Before she left, she asked to see Sophia. Rosa brought Lucia, the 5-year-old who loved butterflies and refused to eat anything yellow, and the child walked directly to Sophia's bedside, and held up a drawing she had made with the absolute confidence of someone who has not yet learned to be uncertain about the value of what she is offering.
"That's you," Lucia said, pointing to a figure at the center of the crayon image. Around her, other shapes. "And those are the dogs." Sophia looked at the drawing for a long time. "What are the dogs doing?" she asked finally. "Protecting you," Lucia said simply. "That's what dogs do. They protect the people they love." Sophia looked at Maya over Lucia's head. Maya looked back at her with the eyes of someone who understood something about surviving things that were designed to end you. Because she had survived one too, and the understanding between them did not require words to transmit. "Thank you," Sophia said, to Maya, to the child, to the drawing. "You sent me a year," Maya said, "through a gap in a partition in the dark. You didn't know me. You didn't know if I'd get out. But you sent it anyway." "I sent it to everyone I could reach," Sophia said. "I know. And you saved my life twice. Once when Rex found me, and once before that, when you made sure I knew someone real had been there before me." Maya took Sophia's hand. "That matters. That mattered when nothing else did." The Mora reckoning came in a conference room in the federal building 2 weeks after the arrests, and Daniel sat across a table from his lieutenant for the last time. Frank Mora had aged in ways that custody accelerates, the specific compression that happens to men who have been holding something heavy for a very long time, and have finally set it down and discovered that the setting down does not bring the relief they anticipated. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not perform regret. He put a drive on the table and pushed it across and said, 11 years of documentation. Everything I collected while I was telling myself I was managing the situation." His voice was flat and accurate. "I was never managing it. I was extending it. I know that now." Daniel looked at the drive. "Why the Highway 86 corridor? Why request me for that patrol specifically?" Mora was quiet for a moment. "Because you had a reason to look that most officers didn't. A personal reason. I thought if anyone was going to stumble onto something they couldn't walk away from, it should be someone with enough investment to follow it through." He met Daniel's eyes. "I told myself I was giving you an opportunity. You used my sister's disappearance as an operational calculation?" "Yes." No qualification, no softening. Daniel picked up the drive. "There are 31 women who spent years in that facility while you looked away. There are women who didn't survive to be found." He stood. "The drive goes to Quan. Whatever it gives us, we use. That's all this is." Mora nodded. He did not say anything else, and Daniel did not give him the chance. The trial began 8 weeks after the arrests, and the courthouse on the first morning was the fullest it had been for any proceeding anyone in the district could remember. Ernesto Cabal sat at the defense table with 3 attorneys and the composed expression of a man who has not yet fully absorbed that the protection he purchased for 20 years has been simultaneously arrested, charged, and is cooperating with the prosecution. The charges were 46 counts: conspiracy to commit human trafficking, kidnapping, racketeering, 19 counts of murder in the first degree, each one representing a woman who had entered the Tierra Negra network and not come out. Sofia Reyes took the stand on the third day. She walked to the witness box with the level bearing of a woman who has made a decision about who she is going to be in this room and is not revisiting it. She took the oath in a clear voice. She sat down and folded her hands in her lap and looked at the prosecutor with the focused attention of someone who has been preparing for this for 6 years, assembling the testimony in her memory in the dark, holding every name and date and detail against the pressure of time and fear and the daily effort of survival, saving it for exactly this. She testified for 5 hours across 2 days. She named names. She gave dates. She described the operational structure of Tierra Negra from the inside, with the precision of someone who had spent 6 years as an involuntary witness to every transaction and movement and decision the network made.
She described the clients, the routes, the facility layout, the hierarchy of command from Cabal through the regional managers to Victor Salinas, who had left Maya Torres in the desert to die and had been arrested at a border crossing 3 days after the convoy intercept, identified by the neck tattoo Maya had described from a hospital bed with a clarity that had never wavered. When the defense attorney asked Sophia whether she had cooperated with the network's operations during her captivity, she answered without hesitation. "I did what I had to do to survive," she said. "I kept records in my memory because I knew that someday someone would ask me exactly what you are asking me right now. Every compromise I made, every impossible choice I was forced into, I made with this moment as the reason." She looked at the attorney with the calm of someone who has nothing left to defend. "I survived so that I could sit here and tell you the truth. That is what I did with 6 years of my life."
The defense attorney sat down. In the gallery, Daniel did not move. Rosa Torres was beside him, with Lucia asleep in her lap. Juan sat in the row behind, her hands folded, her face composed. On Daniel's left, Maya Torres sat straight, with her eyes on Sophia and her jaw set, with the specific resolution of a woman who has looked at something terrible and decided that the correct response is not to look away, but to look harder and remember everything. The verdict took the jury 14 hours. Guilty on all 46 counts. When the foreman read the decision, Lucia woke up from the movement of the people around her and looked at Rosa with the wide, alert eyes of a child who does not know what is happening, but can feel that it matters. Rosa pulled her close, and the little girl looked across at Daniel and said, in the direct, uncalibrated way of 5-year-olds, "Is it over now?" Daniel looked at Sophia, who had turned from the bench and found his face across the courtroom. She was not smiling. She was doing something more complex than smiling. The expression of a person who has reached the end of something enormous and is standing at that end, discovering that the end does not feel the way you imagined it would feel when you were in the middle of surviving your way toward it. "Yes," he told Lucia. "It's over." The sentencing was 3 weeks later, and the judge's final statement to Ernesto Cabal was 9 sentences long and contained no dramatic language. It did not need any. Life without parole on the murder counts. Consecutive decades on each trafficking charge. The math of it added to a number that had no practical meaning because Cabal was 58 years old, and the number of years he would spend in a federal cell was functionally the same as all of the remaining ones. When the gavel fell and Cabal was led away, Daniel sat in the gallery and let the noise of the courtroom move around him without engaging with it, and thought about Rex.
The veterinary assessment had come back 10 days after the raid. The knife wound to Rex's right flank during the facility breach had done something to the cartilage that would not fully repair. Rex would work for another year, the vet had said. Possibly 18 months, but not beyond that. His working life was finishing in the time it takes a season to change. Daniel had sat in the examination room after the vet left, and Rex had put his head in Daniel's lap and exhaled slowly, the long, complete exhale of an animal that has finished something it set out to do and has found the finishing acceptable. "You found her, boy," Daniel had said. "You actually found her." Rex's tail had moved twice. Then he had closed his eyes. The retirement ceremony happened on a Thursday morning in the parking lot of the Pima County Sheriff's facility. It was not a large ceremony. Daniel had not asked for a large one. But the people who came were the right people. Juan, Rosa Mendez, Dr. Vidal. Rosa Torres with Lucia, who had worn her best dress and brought a drawing she had made specifically for Rex, that she presented to Daniel with both hands and great seriousness. Maya Torres stood beside Sofia. The two of them had been meeting twice a week since the trial, talking in the way people talk when they have been through adjacent versions of the same impossible thing, and have found in each other a particular kind of understanding that is not available anywhere else. Sofia had begun, tentatively and with the specific care of someone learning to trust her own judgment again, to think about what she wanted to do with the rest of her life. She had told Daniel it felt like learning to use a hand that had been held in a fist for 6 years. The fingers worked. They just needed to remember that they could open. The department commander read the commendation. Rex sat beside Daniel in his working harness and accepted the attention of the room with the dignified patience he brought to everything that was not the work itself. When Lucia approached him with the drawing, he sniffed it once and then looked at her with amber eyes that held, as they always held, the specific quality of a presence that was entirely here and entirely paying attention. Lucia put her arms around his neck. Rex was still. "Thank you," she said into his fur, "for saving my mom." Daniel looked at the sky over the parking lot, over the desert beyond it, over the road that ran south toward Highway 86 and mile marker 31, and a hollow in the rocks where a Tuesday morning had turned into everything else. He felt Sofia beside him, her shoulder against his arm, and he felt Rex lean back against his knee, and he felt the specific weight of a thing that had been carried for 6 years, finally resting somewhere that was not inside him. He thought about what it meant that a dog had heard a sound he could not hear, that Rex had refused every recall command on a Tuesday morning and run toward a dry wash formation 200 yards off a desert highway, because something in him had registered a frequency that human ears were not built to catch, and had decided without consultation or instruction that the correct response was to go toward it and stand between it and everything else until help arrived. That was not training. Training gave you the capacity. What Rex had done with that capacity, the decision he had made in the specific silence of a desert morning, was his own. "He saved us," Sofia said quietly. Not to Daniel specifically, just to the air, to the fact of it. "He always saves us," Daniel said. "We just have to be paying attention when he tells us where to go." Rex looked up at both of them. His amber eyes were steady and warm and entirely present, the way they had always been, the way they would continue to be for whatever time remained of his working life and beyond it. In the room that would bear his name, in the organization that grew from this morning, in the drawing a 5-year-old had made with both hands and great seriousness, in every woman who walked through a door that had finally opened and knew somewhere in the back of her mind that a German shepherd with a tan and black coat had been part of the reason the door was there. Some miracles do not arrive with thunder. They arrive on 4 legs in the Arizona desert on a Tuesday morning, moving low and fast and absolutely certain toward a sound that only they can hear. That is where this one began. That is where it will never end. 6 months after the sentencing, Sofia Reyes testified before a Senate subcommittee on human trafficking in Washington, D.C., and Daniel watched it on a laptop in his kitchen, with Rex asleep across his feet and a cup of coffee going cold on the table beside him. She wore a dark blue blazer, and she sat at the witness table with the same level bearing she had carried into the courtroom, the bearing that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with the decision she had made about who she was going to be in every room she entered for the rest of her life. She spoke for 40 minutes without notes. She described the operational structure of Tierra Negra with the same precision she had brought to the trial. But she also described something else this time, something she had not been asked about in court because the court had not needed it and the Senate subcommittee did. She described what it felt like to pass a year through a gap under a partition in the dark. "I didn't know if it would reach anyone," she said into the microphone. "I didn't know if the women I reached could get out. I didn't know if anyone would understand what the number meant if they did." She paused. "But I knew that doing nothing was a choice I was not willing to make. So I did the only thing I had. I passed forward the one piece of myself I had managed to hold on to. The year I was taken. The proof that I was real." Another pause, and in the pause, the chamber was completely silent. One woman got out. One woman handed that number to the officer who found her. And that officer was my brother. She looked directly at the camera. "That is what a single act in the dark can do," she said. "That is what refusing to disappear looks like from the inside." Daniel closed the laptop and looked at Rex, and Rex opened one eye and looked back at him and closed it again. "She's going to be okay," Daniel told the dog. Rex's tail moved once against the kitchen floor. He already knew. Voces del Desierto launched its first facility in Tucson 8 months after the trial. Maya Torres had spent those 8 months doing the administrative work of building something from the foundation up, which meant grant applications and zoning permits and the specific, unglamorous infrastructure of an organization that intends to outlast the people who started it. She had done it with Lucia doing homework at the desk behind her, and Rosa Torres bringing dinner to the office 3 nights a week, because Rosa had decided that this work was worth feeding, and she was not a woman who expressed things abstractly when she could express them with food. Sophia came in on the first day and did not leave. The opening ceremony was small. The right people, not the most people. Daniel stood in the back with Rex beside him and watched Sophia speak to the first group of survivors who came through the door. And what he watched was not a speech. It was a woman telling the truth about what she knew from the inside to people who needed to hear it from someone who had been there. And the room received it the way rooms receive things that are true, with a quality of attention that is different from the attention given to things that are merely accurate. A young woman in the second row was crying and trying not to show it, and Sophia stopped mid-sentence and looked at her directly. "You don't have to hold that in here," she said. "This is the one place where you don't have to hold anything in." The young woman cried. Then the woman beside her. Then several others. And Sophia stood at the front of the room and let it happen without trying to manage it or redirect it, because she understood from 6 years of experience that some things have to move through before they can be set down. And the only way to help someone carry something is to stand beside them while they carry it. Daniel looked at Rex. The dog was watching Sophia with his amber eyes, his ears soft, his body relaxed against Daniel's leg. Something in his posture had changed in the months since the raid, a specific quality of restfulness that Daniel had not seen before. Not age exactly, though the gray was coming in at his muzzle now. Something more like completion. The bearing of an animal that has done the thing it was built to do, and has found, in the aftermath of that doing, a different kind of purpose. He still worked. The vet had cleared him for modified duty, and Daniel took him on patrol 3 mornings a week, the highway corridor, because Rex wanted to work, and Daniel was not going to tell him he couldn't. But the urgency was different. The Tuesday morning urgency, the body locked forward, ears forward, paw on glass urgency of a dog who has heard something that requires immediate response. That came less frequently now, as if the frequency he had been tuned to had been answered, and he was listening for the next one, with the patient confidence of an animal that knows it will come when it comes. It came on a Wednesday in February, 14 months after Maya Torres was airlifted from a desert hollow at mile marker 31. Daniel was running the Highway 86 corridor at 8 in the morning, with Rex in the passenger seat, and the winter light coming flat and clean off the desert floor. And Rex went still, in the specific way, the locked way, the way that was not anxiety, but knowing. And Daniel hit the brakes without being asked. 2 miles off the road, Rex's nose was working the window gap with the focused intensity of an animal reading a signal that was there, and faint, and real. Daniel reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9 at mile marker 29. K9 is alerting on the Eastern Wash, investigating." "Copy, Unit 9. He opened the door, and Rex was already moving, low and certain across the desert floor, following the invisible thread of whatever he had caught on the cold morning air. And Daniel ran after him, thinking about a Tuesday morning 14 months ago, and a German shepherd who had refused every recall command and had been right about all of it, and understanding, as he ran, that this was not over, because it was never going to be over. That some work does not complete itself in a single morning, no matter how much that morning changes. That the desert along this corridor had been holding secrets for 20 years, and would go on holding them until the last one was answered. Rex reached the wash first and sat down with one paw raised. A woman, young, bound, alive, looking at the dog with eyes that had gone past fear into something on the other side of it, the specific place that people reach when they have been terrified for so long that the terror has exhausted itself, and what is left is a raw and simple need for something to stop. Rex moved toward her slowly, the way he moved toward people who were carrying grief or pain, with the calibrated pressure of an animal that understood the difference between presence and invasion. He stopped within reach and sat down again, and looked at her with his amber eyes, and waited for her to decide. Her hand came out toward him, trembling. She touched the side of his face. Rex leaned into it and was still. Daniel was on his radio, calling the medevac before he reached them, and then he was on his knees beside her, cutting the rope from her wrists, and talking to her in the level, steady voice he had learned to use in these moments. The voice that said, "You are real, and I am here, and this is not the end of your story." "What's your name?" he asked. "Camilla," she said, barely sound. "Camilla, I'm Officer Daniel Reyes. You're safe. I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes moved from his face to Rex and back. "Your dog," she said. "He found me." "He finds everyone," Daniel said. "That's what he does." The medevac took 17 minutes. Daniel stayed with Camilla the entire time, his hand over hers. Rex pressed against her other side, with the full warm weight of an animal that has decided where he is needed and has no intention of being anywhere else. When the helicopter appeared over the ridge, Camilla turned to look at it with an expression that was not relief yet, but was the first movement toward it, the first small unclenching of something that had been held too tightly for too long. "They're going to take care of you," Daniel said. "And then we're going to find the people who did this." "Promise?" she said. It was the word of someone who has learned that promises are not cheap, and is asking anyway. "Promise," Daniel said, and meant it the way he had always meant it, with the specific weight of a man who had driven this corridor for 6 years, looking for his sister, and had learned, in the finding of her, that the corridor did not stop needing to be driven simply because one search had ended. Rex barked once as the helicopter lifted. The sound crossed the desert and returned as an echo, and then was gone. They stood together in the winter light, the officer and the dog, watching the helicopter carry Camilla Torres toward a hospital where Quan was already being called, and where a network of people who had been built by the specific events of the last 14 months would begin moving toward another case, another name, another woman who had been left in the desert by people who had calculated that the desert would hold the secret. They had calculated wrong. They always calculated wrong. Because they did not account for the part that could not be measured, the part that had no entry in any operational file, the part that was simply a German shepherd on a Tuesday morning, refusing every recall command because he had heard something that required going toward it. Daniel looked at Rex. Rex looked back at him with the amber eyes that had never needed words to say what they were saying. And what they were saying now was what they had always been saying, from the first morning of their partnership to this one. The same clear, unambiguous message. There is more to do. I'm ready. Are you? Daniel put his hand on the dog's shoulder. Let's go, he said. And they went. Because the desert held secrets, yes. Victor Salinas had been right about that. But the desert also held a German shepherd who could hear things no human ear was built to catch, and an officer who had learned to follow when the dog led, and a sister who had passed a year through the dark to every stranger she could reach, and a 5-year-old girl who knew without being taught that dogs protect the people they love, and 31 women who had walked toward a door that had finally opened because someone refused to stop driving the corridor, and an organization called Voces del Desierto that received its first call from a survivor outside Arizona the week before this February morning. Proof that the thing built from one rescue on one morning was already larger than the morning that built it. The desert held all of those things too. And as long as Daniel Reyes drove Highway 86 with a German shepherd in the passenger seat, and his hands steady on the wheel, and his eyes on the wash formations in the distance, the desert's secrets would keep getting answered, one by one, until there were none left. That is a promise, and it will be kept.